And you're welcome to the program. This afternoon, journalism is reportedly under attack with global organization Reporters Without Borders indicating that there is serious attack on the fourth estate. Journalists' safety has seriously deteriorated in recent years, the report says, while adding that although Ghana is considered to be a regional model of democratic stability, journalists have experienced growing pressure in recent times. Now, to protect their jobs and their security, most media persons, just like myself, have increasingly resorted to self-censorship as the government, according to this report, is showing itself to be intolerant. Here's a package and a wrap of the activities marking the World Press Freedom Day today for you, starting with details of the report.
Yeah, Ghana was 60th globally. This time around, we've dropped 2 places, like you said. We are now 62nd. They have the political context. They say that although Ghana is considered a regional model of democratic stability, journalists have experienced growing pressures in recent years. To protect their jobs and their security, they are increasingly resorting to self-censorship as government has shown itself to be intolerant of criticism. In addition, a third of the country's media outlets are owned by politicians or by people with ties to the leading political parties, and the content they produce is largely partisan. That is the main argument that Reporters Without Borders make in terms of the political context. If you look at the legal framework, it says that although freedom of the press is guaranteed by the 1992 Constitution, media outlets are free to operate as they like. There are significant concerns about a clause in the law that allows a fee to be charged if the information requested is in a language other than English. That is talking about the right to information law and how journalists are struggling sometimes to get the needed information. But this is also very, very important. Look at the economic context. It says that in Ghana, most media outlets face financial problems, reflecting in low salaries and poor working conditions for journalists. Newspapers are often launched only to fold within a certain time frame. On the other hand, government agencies and advertising contracts are paid for publishing news items. Non-transparent and inequitable processes are used to allocate state advertising. And then it goes to safety of journalists, where it talks about the 3 journalists who were arrested last year and the specific concerns that the Reporters Without Borders have about these arrests. So if you look at a political indicator, for instance, Ghana globally is 63rd. We fare 61.88. That is the point we get there. If you look at the economic indicator, Ghana is globally on the 80th position. It is one of the reasons why Ghana continues to drop, because of the economic indicator. The argument that a lot of journalists are not being properly remunerated, and so journalists are having to do a lot of things that undermines press freedom. And so on that score, Ghana is not doing so well. We score 47.94%, and we are 80th globally. In terms of legislations, the laws that exist to protect journalists, Ghana is doing fairly well. We are 31 in the world, scoring 79.62%. In terms of a security indicator, Ghana is also performing very poorly there. We place 103 out of 180 countries in the world, and we score only 61.25%, making the concerns that journalists sometimes are being threatened in the line of their work. If you look at a political indicator, the idea that journalists are subservient to political parties and that political parties and politically connected persons are the ones who own media houses. Ghana scores 54 and has 66.61%. Look at an economic indicator as well. From 2022, we have 69%, and then you come to this year where we have 47.2%. The security indicator, we seem to have dropped a few pointers from last year's 101 place out of 180 to this year's 103. So, and it's not looking so good. You look at last year and you look at this year, in terms of almost all the indicators, Ghana has deteriorated.
DJ, along with Media Foundation of West Africa, GIBA and Primpac, recently urged the government to amend certain provisions of the Electronic Communications Act and the Criminal Code, specifically Section 208 of the Criminal and Other Offences Act 1960 Act 29. As critical stakeholders in the media industry, we cannot remain unconcerned as these laws are used to arrest citizens and journalists and prefer criminal charges over civil remedies for press and speech offenses that are merely defamatory. The arbitrary application of these laws only serves to instill fear in the general populace. One of our colleagues, Noah Nati Dami of Radio Ada, was recently detained for 7 days on false publication charges due to these bad laws. And this has affected our 2023 World Press Freedom Index, our ranking on 2023 World Press Freedom Index. Ghana has moved from 60 to 62, 2 backwards. As the umbrella body of journalists in this country, Madam Chairperson, we will continue to ensure that any action or law that seeks to stifle free expression fails. Madam Chairperson, on this day, we cannot forget Ahmed Swali. Over 4 years after his gruesome murder, we continue to seek justice for him by putting pressure on the authorities concerned to up their game. Quite recently, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice disclosed that the docket on Ahmed Swali had not reached his office, considering the fact that his office has prosecutorial powers. The President also assured us at our dinner night last year, that's last December, that he is going to see to the closure of this case and ensure that perpetrators are brought to face the full rigor of the law. As an association, we will continue putting pressure on the police to conclude the investigation on the matter and submit the docket to the AG for necessary action.
Well, so that's the position of the Ghana Journalists Association. I want to bring in our Executive Director for the Media Foundation for West Africa, Sulemana Brahima, who's spending some time with us here on the Pulse. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. We'll get into the details, but your initial comments on, of course, the drop, 2 steps back, that's where we find ourselves now as a country. It's not encouraging, is it? Kindly unmute for us so we can get the point you're making, sir.
Well, I think it's quite unfortunate for Ghana to be where we are now. We used to be, even 2018, #1 in Africa, around 29, 30th position in the world. And now we dropped last year to the 60th and this year to the 62nd. I don't think that it is a development that anyone who is concerned about the progress of our democracy and the progress of our human rights records should be happy about. But it is not surprising, because I don't think that from the significant drop last year, any measures have been taken by government to address concerns and the issues that made us get to where we got to last year. And so it's unfortunate, but for me, it's not surprising.
A number of dimensions to it, but the political context, of course, comes forth, since it's got to do directly with our line of duty. And of course, government being cited as positioning itself or showing itself as an institution that's not willing to allow criticism. How dangerous is that for our democracy as a country?
Well, that's very dangerous, because I think that if you want to measure the strength of a democracy, you look at the strength of the media sector, how free our critical journalists can be, and how civil liberties and press freedoms are protected. But over the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years now, under this administration, we've seen, as the GJA president was talking about, incident upon incident, arrest, detention, storming of media houses, ostensibly over claims that people have made, which are deemed to be false. In some instances, these are just basically statements that are made that at best defames someone. For example, if you take the incident involving Obi Ansa, it was a claim over an alleged acquisition of some state land by the First Lady. And if it was deemed or realized that it wasn't true, what prevented the First Lady from filing a defamation suit against the journalist? But they got police officers to storm the radio station to pick the journalist in the Rambo style. We've had the incident of David Tamaklo of WhatsApp News, who was actually arrested on charges of publication of false news. And he was arrested at the time when that particular news that they were claiming hadn't actually been published. the DJ president talked about the recent incident of Noah Dame. And I asked people, how did a post, about Magdan turn out to be a case of Republic versus Noah Dame? So I think that, as we said collectively the other week, the government is significantly abusing this particular provision. And it is quite curious because this is a piece of legislation that President Akufo-Addo, then candidate Akufo-Addo in 2011, castigated and said that it was even unconstitutional for that law to exist. But surprisingly, under his regime as president, that is when we are seeing the law being used and in some instances being abused.
Expert says the activity of state agencies, for instance, the Ghana Police Service, is that known institution that cracks down on the media directly if they are to enforce these regulations on the publication of false news and all of that. They are the ones doing the arrests. So why is government taking ultimate responsibility for what's happening?
Well, I think, Blessed, as you know, when we say government, it doesn't mean President Akufo-Addo, or it doesn't just mean his cabinet. It's the state, and the government is responsible for managing the affairs of the state. And to the extent that these actions are being perpetrated by state actors, certainly that is the government. If the police or the military or the immigration service or any other state entity for that matter acts in a way that undermines any obligations and commitments of Ghana to international, regional, and national conventions or legislation, pieces of legislation on human rights and other actions, it is the state, and the state is represented by the government.
I see. Now, going forward, are there some recommendations, for instance, from your perspective as the Media Foundation for West Africa, as to how we could start to reverse the trend? Are we beyond repair?
No, we are not. We are certainly not beyond repair. But the first is that the government must accept that things are not going well with press freedom in our country. So far, we have had a government that is living in denial. You talk about what is happening, and they will have all manner of defenses to put out. Before the 2022 press freedom ranking came out, Madam Elizabeth Ohene, who is a media advisor to the government, wrote an article chastising the Media Foundation for a publication that I had put out and an interview that I had done with the BBC, saying that we are biased. 2 days or so, the report was released, and that significant drop happened. So, first of all, the government must accept that things are not going well. They must move away from rhetoric to action. We have been talking about the National Comprehensive Framework on Safety of Journalists for how many years now? We don't have it. The government says, look, we are committed to the fight against press freedom, fighting against abuses against journalists, but we are seeing none of that. The president continues to say, look, we will find the killers of Ahmed Swale. 2 years on, nothing is happening. The Attorney General at last year's World Human Rights Day said, oh, we are working on the Swale incident and we'll make sure that the perpetrators are brought to book. It's just talk and talk and talk and no action. This is not the first time we are having a government under the Fourth Republic. And why is the situation the way it is? It is because we have a government that has become quite intolerant and believes that everybody must sing the praise of the government. And without singing the praises of the government, then you are not doing something that is right. I think that it starts with government, and we all have a responsibility to play.
Okay, your organization was there when the information minister launched what he termed as the coordinated mechanisms for the safety of journalists. He's been speaking today as well about this whole ranking, and of course, as we celebrate the International Press Freedom Day, I want you to just spare a few minutes with us, listen to the information minister, and I'll take your thoughts on his posture on this.
Today's press briefing focuses, I think, primarily on the report that is about to be presented by GEPA. But ahead of that, I'm sure you know that today is World Press Freedom Day. So the government has a quick statement to put out, which I will share with you, and then I'll make a few introductory remarks about the importance of the report that is about to be published today. the government of Ghana renews its commendation of the media in commemoration of World Press Freedom Day. The occasion's 30th anniversary is on the international theme, Shaping a Future of Rights, Freedom of Expression as a Driver for All Other Human Rights. The media has been instrumental over the years in highlighting various rights that require attention for full enjoyment. The work of the media also in highlighting instances of abuse of some rights by sections of society has led to redress in many of these instances. We urge the media to remain resolute on this path. The quest to have all citizens fully access their economic rights is yet to be fully achieved, especially as the world faces dim economic forecasts following recent global challenges. Now, while urging the media in Ghana to keep the spotlight on all human rights, we want to in particular encourage an even sharper focus on efforts to ensure that the economic rights of citizens are fully actualized. Programs by state and non-state actors to support the Ghanaian people in building back faster after the recent economic challenges should be given deeper attention.
Well, Information Minister speaking there, then he goes ahead to ask the media to support the coordinated mechanism for the safety of journalists. Your take on government's position on it?
Well, I think largely the minister was basically sending a message of well wishes to the media fraternity and also urging the media to do quite a bit of work on, helping citizens to assert their economic rights and perhaps less of things around press freedom and freedom of expression in our country. But just to comment on the basis of your statement that the minister urged journalists to support the mechanism on safety of journalists, I don't know which mechanism that the minister is talking about, because we don't have that comprehensive framework on safety of journalists. We don't have it. Where is it? Basically an office space was allocated, as a space for, supporting journalists to do whatever it is that they have to do. You talk to the NMC, they tell you, look, it was just basically an office that was commissioned, no desks, no tables, and so on and so forth, no personnel to work on that. Look, 2 years ago, we started a project in Liberia and Sierra Leone on helping these countries to develop their national comprehensive framework on safety of journalists. And when we were proposing the project, we did indicate that we wanted to model it on Ghana's example, because we were quite sure that given the way the minister has been talking about it, we're going to have that framework in place before even the project commenced. As I speak, we finished the Liberia National Comprehensive Framework for Safety of Journalists. We've done the same in Liberia, has been launched by state actors, and it's working. And in Ghana, we are still talking. So I think that's why I make the point that we need to move from the rhetoric, the fine talks, to having things done. Otherwise, we would continue to drop. Because again, as I said, we have a government certainly that is not, friendly when it comes to receiving criticism on the part of the media, and it's something that we have to work on. Otherwise, I think we will continue to lose that golden opportunity and golden ranking that we used to have some previous years ago.
Okay, we're wrapping up on this conversation, but we can't go without speaking about the economic context to this. The reports pointing out that most newspapers, most media outlets are facing equally a financial crunch. And in the case of print media, many of them are beginning to fold out. You're concerned about this?
Well, that's really a global phenomenon. Issues of media sustainability or media viability is a global phenomenon. I don't think that the economy here is so weak than the economy in Liberia or Sierra Leone or the Gambia or some of the smaller other countries. So that's a global phenomenon, and it's a major concern for all media development actors. Right now in global conversations, that's where the focus is. How do we ensure that the media are able to operate are able to survive the storm. But we need to also be mindful of the fact that times have changed. We cannot continue to use old practices, old methods, old strategies to achieve, results at a time when things have changed. So we all have to revive our strategies as media operators. And why don't we have mergers and acquisitions? Why can't 10 newspapers come together and say, look, instead of competing against ourselves, let us have a joint publication and do more? I think we need to think anew. Otherwise, the death of some of the media houses would be quite close.
Grateful for the opportunity. It's a day of introspection as well. Anything to reflect on?
Well, I would say that best wishes to my colleague journalists across the country and across West Africa. We just have to do our work in terms of promoting accountability, transparency, playing our watchdog role. Times are hard, it's difficult. Some people are working without salaries, but of course, the global economy has taken a hit and we all need to sacrifice to rebuild it back. So let's do all that we can and look for better times ahead.
Yeah, we'll look forward to those exciting times. Suleiman Ibrahim, thank you for spending some time with us here on The Pulse. But more staggering figures are coming from the Ghana Statistical Service this afternoon because unemployment rate, as we understand it in Ghana, is surging to a record high of 25%, with some 1.7 million Ghanaians remaining unemployed. In the latest document released by the Ghana Statistical Service, 2 out of every 3 females in the country is currently not having any job to do. That's the finding of this annual household income and expenditure survey released by the service covering the period 2022. In all, 1 million persons in Ghana, according to the very report, are multi-dimensionally poor. Now, government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina-Anim has been breaking it all down for us to understand.
So although we are talking about 11 million of our population that at any point in time they are employed, those who are working by themselves, own account workers, and those who are contributing family workers, largely they do not have any forms of contract binding what they do. It's about 2/3 of that. Then we find female dominating among those who are vulnerably employed with a percentage point difference of about 21%. So this is the headline figure that we've always worked with when we come to unemployment, whether it's 13.4, 13.7, 13.9. And as I indicated, we are always concerned about this figure. We didn't deviate from what we know from the census in terms of what our unemployment rate is. During the 2021 population and housing census, we got an unemployment rate of 13.4. And throughout the 3 quarters that we followed the same households, we still have figures in the region of 13.4 and 13.9, depicting the unemployment rate that we have in Ghana. Consistent with our censuses and our surveys, we've seen this as predominantly an urban phenomenon. Honorable Deputy Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's slow down the conversation on that. And now let's begin to think about what is happening to whether somebody is employed or somebody is not employed. The benefit that you get from following the same people. So we took our third quarter data. And look at those who were unemployed. And went back to the first quarter and looked at what they were doing in the first quarter. And find out whether the characteristics of what they were doing in the first quarter made them susceptible to unemployment in the third quarter. And what we saw is that in the first quarter of 2022, those who were unemployed in the third quarter, about 2/3 of them were in vulnerable employment. And this goes back to emphasize the point that it's the characteristics of what they do that is what we need to pay emphasis on rather than the rate. So those who were unemployed in the third quarter, go back to the first quarter, find out what they are doing, and what they were doing in the first quarter were activities that we characterize as vulnerable employment. Specifically, those who are in non-aggregate self-employed without employees, about 1/3 of it agricultural contributing worker about 17% of that. That alone is taking about 50% of those who were employed in the first quarter but were doing vulnerable work. And for that reason, in the third quarter, they became unemployed.
Shocking details there. So how do we turn around the narrative and to create more opportunity for the teeming youth out there? Let's bring in Sheriff Gali, his founder and CEO for the Ghana Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs, is joining us on a conversation such as this. And Sheriff, many of you have been attempting to get more and more within the youth bracket to create their own jobs. As you say, government cannot continue to create the jobs for them. But how do we start off, knowing that the numbers are staggering? 1.7 million, that's a lot. Not all of us can create our own jobs, you agree? Sheriff, kindly unmute so I can hear you. It appears we're having some challenges connecting to Sheriff Gali, but of course would have an extensive conversation on this, talking about the latest figures as we have them, and of course the breakdown as well, given to you there by the Ghana Statistical Service. There's a need for us to look at the alternatives, which is, of course, the need for private sector involvement. The Ghana Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs says there'll be a need for the youth to look at alternative means of creating their own jobs. And of course, that's why we're speaking to Sheriff Gali. He's the founder and CEO for the Ghana Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs, of course, making their own targets and indicating that they'll be creating some more opportunities for dialogue with policy makers and their group as well, to try as much as possible to find middle grounds and have access to capital that will yield the opportunities for the creation of new jobs. So Sheriff is back with us. Sheriff, if you can hear me, I was asking about the way forward, looking at the numbers that we have. 1.7 million, that's quite a lot, but you say that the youth can also work towards creating their own jobs. Tell me how. And kindly unmute so we can hear you. Sheriff, if you can hear me, kindly unmute so we can get the point you're making, sir. Okay. And we'll definitely bring that story to you later on. But for now, we focus on the future of our Ghanaian students. Student evacuees from Sudan are appealing to government to consider an academic reintegration policy that will allow Ghanaian students returning from war-torn Sudan to continue with their university courses. Now, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration yesterday brought back about 74 Ghanaians after a successful operation which saw over 80 Ghanaian nationals moved out of the conflict zone within Sudan, where the conflict recently broke out, to neighboring Ethiopia for a planned evacuation. After touching down here at the airport, some of the students say they need government intervention to complete their courses, which they started elsewhere in Sudan. Ridwan Salifu is a final year medical student who I engaged yesterday at the airport about the way forward. He's graduating in 3 months, but that's not possible any longer due to the violence and clashes within Sudan. Terminal 3 of the Kotoka International Airport, where we have a number of students making their way from Sudan. 74 of them were told coming back home, and of course they formed a large complement, a portion actually of the 78 or 80 that will be, of course, eventually reintegrating into the Ghanaian community. There's a need for us to engage some of the students, but let's give you a feel of what's happening. Just a few hours ago, they arrived here, 78 of them. We understand that 2 others came ahead of the numbers that we're seeing here, but the numbers and the people you see all over here are students who are returning from Khartoum. So let's try and get their experiences and try and speak to some of them who are with us. Sorry for intruding, but of course it must be a hard time for all of you now. How are you feeling now, being back?
Oh, I think I'm okay for now, because we actually had a safe passage on our way coming. Although there were military checkpoints, although there were military checkpoints at each and every place we get. But like, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we are able to like have a safe passage. Yeah.
How tough or otherwise was it for you?
Tough or otherwise, I think the situation, you know, usually when Sudanese want to do something, they tend to pre-announce it. But as of what happened at this moment in time, they didn't actually announce it. So it was a little bit exasperating for us. As time went on, it exacerbated and everybody was scared.
Did you experience some of the shooting that happened there?
Yeah, experience. I've seen shootings, I've seen rockets flying around and stuff like that. Yeah, but the good thing is that, you know, it wasn't between military and then the civil the civilians. It's between two militaries here, the paramilitary and then the Sudanese military. The only issue is that you may catch a stray bullet. You see that? But civilians like this, there's no problem.
So for your case, are you also one of the students studying there?
Exactly, I'm also one of the students.
You were in your final year?
In fact, I'm left with 3 months to completion. Yeah, so this is quite, you know, traumatic. Yeah.
What plans do you have?
As of now, let me see. I'm looking forward to the Ghanaian government, and if they can try to integrate us into the some of the schools in Ghana here. It's in that. No, they've not done it yet, but that's.
But the courses you're studying, would they find space?
Yeah, they'll find, because they are medical courses, which is everywhere. You know, medical courses they are the same thing everywhere.
So you're a medical student?
I'm a medical student studying in Sudan.
You just have about 3 months.
About 3 months to completion. Seriously. Yeah, it's very, very sad. Very, very sad. But you know, everything happens for a reason. We don't know. Maybe God have, you know, good plans in store for us.
Are you in touch with your parents?
Okay. As of what happened, like, I've not really spoken to my parents, though. I mean, I'm direct, like, I'm in touch with my brothers, you know, because, you know, some of them are BP and stuff like that. So even as of now, they don't even know I'm in Ghana here now. So later on, I'll do my own stuff and, you know, exactly. But for my brothers, they know that I'm in. Yeah.
If the plan as you are requesting doesn't work, what do you intend to do?
What I intend to do is, oh, okay, he said we should move to, like, maybe if that doesn't work, as of now, because I have a little bit of experience here, because as of being in Sudan, studying also, I was working, I was teaching. I even have my personal YouTube channel where I teach English language and Arabic language. So it depends, because the issue we have in Ghana here is it's more inclined to certificate issues. They don't look at the ability of the individual. You seen that? So if they were to look at the ability of individuals, I'm sure it will be very easy for me to at least get a job here. But in Ghana here, nobody looks at you when you don't have the papers, you know. So that's it.
Well, so that's the appeal from the students. Meanwhile, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Amperchum Kwekusapun, says subsequent engagement will be held among student leadership to ensure their smooth reintegration into the Ghanaian society. Touching on the possibility of some of the Ghanaian nationals being stranded in Sudan, the minister indicated that efforts will be made to evacuate all our citizens. As for now, all 74 or 80 of them, as we speak, are safe.
Whether budget or no budget, IMF or no IMF, we've managed to pull it through. They are home. It tells you that we are always prepared for such eventualities.
Honorable, I want to ask about their education. So these individuals, they have to put their education on hold. Are there efforts to find some schools for them, some courses for them in the country, like we did for the Ukraine students?
Right. Well, that is something for tomorrow. But already, like I said, we've learned lessons from what happened when the Ukrainians came in. So we are looking at the same lessons that can be learned.
So at the moment, there's no educational arrangements for them yet?
No, we haven't. The Ukrainians, the fact of the matter is when they came, there was no arrangement in place. Because the Ukraine, there were over 800 students, half of them decided not to come home. So you could not have arranged anything ahead of time. Secondly, with Ukraine, we had bought tickets for all these people. When they got to Hungary, Poland, or Romania, they decided that half of them decided that they were not coming home, and there was nothing that we could do. Now that they are home and safe, when they get to, we have all their details anyway. We have all their details, and we know of the leadership as well. So subsequent engagements will be with the leadership, and then also will be with the relevant government agencies. Right, so that's the way forward.
Last question, sir. So do we know if there are any more Ghanaians at all in Sudan, or it's only 80 Ghanaian nationals we know of in Sudan?
As at today, all those we know of have been accounted for. Nobody knows tomorrow who is going to pop up from somewhere. Initially, we never expected anybody to be in the Darfur region. We all know what we've heard about the Darfur. Last minute, we heard some footballers were in Darfur. So we are ready for any eventuality. If anybody pops up, we will reach out.
Well, let's take you to our earlier story where, of course, the statistical services indicating that unemployment in the country is rising or shot up to 1.7 million with the percentage movement going all the way to 25% in terms of unemployment rate here in the country. Let's speak now to Director of Corporate Affairs at the Youth Employment Agency, Kwesi Afriyie, who's joining the conversation. Sharif Gali is founder and CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Young Entrepreneurs. They are all joining the conversation now. Kwesi, thank you for your time. Staggering figures there from the Statistical Service. 25% rise in unemployment, 1.7 million. How do you intend to deal with this as the Youth Employment Agency?
Well, thank you very much, and let me greet your viewers this afternoon. The figures are really startling, as you say, and it's not too surprising because we have this all over the world, as economists would say, that this unemployment situation, because, of course, of the exogenous factors, is happening across the globe. Everybody has a hit to head, but the good news is that our government is doing a lot about it. If you come to the Youth Employment Agency, for example, we've tried to create as many as possible employment opportunities for the young people in Ghana. If you were with us yesterday, just yesterday, we have created an opportunity for about 6,000 young people who are looking for jobs in the insurance sector. So we are partnering with the National Insurance Commission and the Ghana Insurance College to recruit young people, 6,000 young people, train them for a week as insurance agents to do underwriting, to do brokerage, to do learn under the insurance experts, risk analysis, and so on and so forth, the day-to-day car registration and so on, and all of that, and eventually get deployed and get sustainable or permanent employment from these insurance companies. So we had about, I could count about 50 insurance companies here in Ghana who were part of our program yesterday at the College of Physicians and Surgeons. We could count about 400 to 500 people, young people who were looking for employment and participated in the program yesterday. We had the National Insurance Commission itself, and then the Ghana Insurance College, which is going to do the training, and that's starting from Monday. Aside that, we've been doing artisan directory programs where we have something we call BRI. People are being trained in brick molding and brick laying. We have the job center program where we have opportunities for young people that are also looking forward to get connected to the private sector, individual private sector companies. We have recruited about 15,000 community police personnel. In the last 6 or 8 months, we have recruited about 6,000 community health workers. So all of these are in the system, and we reckon the fact that there is hardships brought obviously by the COVID for young people like Sharif Gali, who is very industrious and creating opportunities of entrepreneurship for young people here in Ghana. We are partnering with all of them and making sure that we are able to mitigate the startling challenges that we have, most of which you are talking about. And of course,
but if we put, but if we put all the figures together, the interventions that you're running, it will certainly not be up to 1 million or more.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just talking about the various interventions that you're running. If we put all of them together, you talk about the recent one that you're running, which will take up some 6,000 unemployed youth. If we bring together all the interventions you're running at the Youth Employment Agency, I doubt if we will be able to get the 1.7 million job opportunities. That's quite a high number, you agree? Kweko, can you hear me?
And there are several, the national... Can you hear me?
Yes, we lost you briefly. If you could just take that point for me. I was asking you that if we bring together all the interventions you're running, 1.7 million is on the high side. You'll still not be able to equate the numbers now.
I agree. But what I'm saying is that the Youth Employment Agency is one institution. And if we are doing about 35,000 young people for employment in a year or in about 8 months. There are other institutions like the National Entrepreneurship Innovation Program. There is the National Youth Authority. If all of them are doing the numbers that we are doing, obviously we'll be able to meet up or mitigate or reduce that 1.7 million number. So yes, we agree that the number is on the high side, and we are all aware that this has been brought about not by any normal procedure or by any normal means, but by the fact that things which are beyond the control of our economic managers and, of course, individual economic managers of any country, things that have happened across the globe is really affecting people. I was in the US, I think, last week or so, and if you listen to radio, if you watch TV, the problem and the challenge is everywhere. And we are doing our best to make sure that we mitigate the problem, as I've said. Well, the numbers may not be enough, but we believe that in 1 year, we are able to create new jobs of about 30 to 35,000 jobs, then that is not a small number to overlook. And if we're able to, in all other sectors, local government, Ministry of Trade, and all of the other sectors are doing the same.
It appears we're having some challenges connecting to Kwesi Afriyie there, but of course he's been talking about the interventions from the Youth Employment Agency to tackle this youth bulge. Let's bring in Sheriff Gali. Sheriff, let's see if the lines to you are much clearer now. You've seen the numbers, and you say the way to go is to do some private partnership to enable access to capital, which will help the youth create their own jobs.
Yeah. So,
can you hear me?
Yes, Kwesi, I'll come back to you briefly. Just hold on for us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's so alarming to see these numbers, but it's not a prophecy. It's something that we've been talking about from COVID-19. We've been talking about the young people who will be losing a lot of jobs. We've been talking about this. So it is not a prophecy, something that we have seen coming. But, you know, as it is, we always have to equate it to what is happening on the global market, where there's recession, where there's, granted, we understand these things here, it affects everyone. It affects us as in our country, Ghana. But you see, Blessed, when we want to talk about putting in measures to be like a stopgap to some of these issues, we are talking about being deliberate. If you look at Ghana's unemployment situation, it has been something that is happening. It's not today. It's been happening long. Just that the increment now is too wild that everybody is running haywire about. But it's been happening. And it's all hinged on three main things. And the three main things are as easy as possible for any other person who, even if you are not if you are not a leader of the economy, you should know some of these things. Number one is the skill set of our young people. You see, Blessed, go back to our tertiaries. What do we churn out? Young people who only know who can chew and pour, and they don't have any technical skills coming up. Blessed, it is even becoming more serious, because let me tell you what, AI has come to take over people's job. A lot of people, whether we like it or not, no matter how beautiful we make it look, there will be more people losing their jobs because AI is going to replace some people. Technology, just this technology, even knowing common Microsoft Word, a lot of our graduates do not know. So it boils down to the skill set of our young people that we are churning out today. We need to relook at that as a nation. The other thing is that, to be honest with you, Akwesi have said so many things, but the truth is that there is that still loophole between government and private sector. There is not that partnership, that serious collaboration. And when we lose that, then there are so many things happen. Just imagine these 3 new taxes that have been introduced. Ask yourself as a business person, will you like to employ somebody and add to the burden of your payroll? No. So if the private sector is supposed to serve as a partner to employ, to support government employ, and now private sector have to battle with taxes and then have to even reduce their cost of production, then they will not even think of employing. And that is a problem. So there need to be serious collaboration between government and the private sector. If government sits with the private sector to talk, some of these things we can work with them to mitigate them. Then the last thing is that the deliberate effort and the political will. This government have done their best. I have seen what they want to do with NEIP, the National Entrepreneurship Innovation Program. I've seen what Kwesi, my good friend, and co are doing with YE, but it's not enough. We need to be deliberate. If you want to promote youth entrepreneurship,
then you need to be deliberate about. You need to make sure there's funding. You need to make sure there's capacity building. You need to make sure that there's access to market for these young people. Ask yourself, all the young entrepreneurs you know who are battling on their own. They do not get any support from anywhere. So we need to be deliberate. We need to have that political will to say that, hey, we cannot create the jobs. Let us stop giving fake numbers. We can create the jobs, or we can do our best as government, but we can't solve the unemployment problem alone. What do we need to do as a state, as a government, is that let us go back to the drawing board and empower the young people to be creative. Let them create the jobs. Let them, even if they are not employing others, let them create their own jobs to be self-employed. By so doing, you provide them the necessary skills they need to be entrepreneurs. You provide them access to capital, and then also open up the market for these young people. If not, this thing will continue. 25%, you are seeing it, and we are all opening our eyes. But it may even be more. And as we go forward with AI and all of these things coming, it will surprise you. So the skill set, the collaboration between government, that is the public-private partnership, it needs to be looked at, and that of the effort to support youth entrepreneurship. If this is not done, we may still have to record more. And sadly, I have to say I'm not seeing any better way for us. Yes.
Sheriff, just hold on. Let's see what the thoughts of Akwesi will be on this. Akwesi, if you're with us, is it time that we brought together all of these separate youth and entrepreneurial programs and agencies set up by government to oversee the creation of job opportunities for the youth? Probably bring them under one big umbrella so we're able to tackle this problem head on.
So if you say one umbrella, I would be asking whether one umbrella under a ministry or one umbrella under one single institution, because all of these institutions obviously have their individual specialties. If you come to the Youth Employment Agency, for example, our Act 2015 Act 887 exactly mandates us to make sure that young people between the ages of 15 and 35 have jobs, whether in the private sector or in the public sector, whether we are creating the jobs or we are facilitating a very conducive environment for the private sector to be able to recruit. If you go to NYA, for example, they are supposed to take care of the policy regulations and provide also the conducive environment for the youth themselves, that's the young people, to thrive. If you go to National Entrepreneurship Innovation Program, the specialty, maybe with the Ghana Enterprises Agency as well, is to make sure that people like Sharif Gali, people like, we can talk of Solomon and all of the startup institutions and entrepreneurship institutions, devoid of your age, not between the ages of 15 and 35 like we will do, will be catered for. So far as you have a business plan, so far as you have an idea, so far as you have a vision that you want to implement, so far as you need some kind of funding and you can prove your worth in being able to make sure that your business thrives. Of course, the business won't just thrive, but it will inure. So a lot of people also being employed. Then you lay with the National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program or the Ghana Enterprises Agency. So yes, it is important that we synergize, we put our efforts together, but maybe not necessarily put all the institutions together. However, there has to be coordinated efforts between these institutions to make sure that not just the young people that we, the Youth Employment Agency, looks at, but the young people, the active brackets of the people in Ghana, and everybody, whether old or young, whether you are looking for, if only you are looking for a job, will be able to find a job.
Yeah, but the point is, if the approach as it is now was working effectively, then the numbers shouldn't have been going up from 19% thereabout in 2021. Now the figures are staggering. So why not collapse everything, bring everyone together so we find a new approach to this?
So I think really the numbers we are seeing now, it's not about the current approach. I agree that, yes, of course, we need to improve upon the activities of the current approach for each institution. We really need to make sure that each of them is working. And I'm telling you how the Youth Employment Agency, within just 1 year, it hasn't happened anywhere in the country before or in any of the institutions before that. Since Mr. Kofi by Japan took over, in 1 year, new jobs, both within the private and the public sector. So our collaborations with a company like INZAG is creating 800 new jobs for people in the artisan industry. Our partnership with a company a private sector company in the cocoa industry is going to create about 4,000 new jobs, and we are putting that advert out. We have put that advert out already. These are partnerships that we are embarking on, making sure that the young people are having jobs. And I'm saying that if all institutions are effective as the YE currently is and are creating enough jobs, it will never now be about putting all the institutions together to make sure that we have a synchronized effort. But if we synergize, if we make each of the institutions effective and coordinate very well, we'll still arrive at the same point where we want to arrive at when we put all of these institutions together. So for me, it is to make sure that each and every one of them is getting enough support from government, enough funding from government, enough structures within their sectors, and to make sure that the mandate for which they have been set up is being actualized. And the numbers that they are looking for, we are able to create them. And I'm saying again that the numbers that we are seeing, the skyrocketing numbers in unemployment that we are seeing, cannot be, if you look at it economically, you cannot rate it like any other year. So, for example, if you want to rate it like 2005, 2006, 2007, or you rate it 2014, 15, 16, you cannot rate that same period between 2020 to 2023 because economically, the foreign influence, the exogenous factors are overriding the endogenous factors. The things that the economic managers of our country can control are subservient to the things that they cannot control. Look at the world oil prices now. Look at the dollar rate now. Look at our inflation rate now. And inflation rate is not happening here in Ghana alone. Exchange rate is not happening here in Ghana alone. All of the factors, economic factors, macro factors, micro factors that we will be speaking about are not happening in Ghana alone. It's happening across the globe. And so the same way inflation is rising here in Ghana, it is rising in the US, it is rising in Europe, it is rising in Asia. The same way unemployment is rising, and we can all
but for us to know the effectiveness of the policies you are running, have you been able to quantify your contribution, for instance, to the job creation agenda? As the YE,
we have positioned ourselves. We have positioned ourselves as a youth employment agency. Number one, to be the fulcrum or the pivot of the president's 1 million jobs agenda. And now we are talking about 1.7. So I'm sure eventually it is not just about the president's 1 million jobs agenda, but it will be about the entire unemployment situation we have in the country. So now we'll be talking about 1.7. We are saying that we are going to lead that agenda to create more employment for the youth. And that's why now, if you realize that the Youth Employment Agency some years back was only talking about community protection assistance, what people know as a community police. We're only talking about community health workers or community education, teaching assistants, teacher, and so on and so forth. But now I'm talking to you about a collaboration with a private company in the construction sector to construct roads. I'm talking to you about a collaboration with the real estate industry for people to be able to, on their own, design and build the red bricks and know how to set them up and build houses on their own. So they become masters of their own. We are collaborating with the private sector, the artisanal industry, to build people up as plumbers, as masons, and so on and so forth. I'm talking to you about the BRI. I'm talking to you about the cocoa industry, a collaboration with a private sector company, which is going to recruit young people to become extension officers on cocoa farms, especially in the Western region. All of these were non-existent before. So Sheriff was talking about being innovative, having new ideas. Of course, AI is coming. We have sat around the table as management of the Youth Employment Agency, and we are saying that we are in the advent of COVID. Unemployment is rising. What else can we do to augment the current activities of the agency? We realize that we need to fall on the private sector. We need to provide a conducive environment for the private sector. We needed to open up the private sector. And that is why all of these new initiatives that I'm talking about are coming up. The cocoa, the farms, all of the new initiatives are coming up. So yes, our contribution is very significant, and we are moving forward to make sure that the numbers Ghana Statistical is releasing, and these are just new numbers. So of course, it is in retrospective, year on year. So we will talk about the previous year. If we add hours now and we tabulate all the new numbers that are coming up, I'm sure the 1.7 will come down. And our effort is to make sure that we're able to solve the problem.
Sheriff?
Yes, blessed. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Yeah, so Akwesi has said it. I like what he said. If any other or all other agencies are putting in place their effort, just like they are doing at YE, they will be able to create more jobs. And that is true. Actually, he said it. And one other thing, it boils down to the fact that central government need to be deliberate in supporting the creation of jobs and pushing for youth entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
I be able to say it, but I can say it for him. They are there, are supposed to be the engine for creating and facilitating jobs, but they are not even resource. Akwesi may not say it, he may argue, but that's a reality because we know. And it's not the only agency that is supposed to. So this is where it goes back to the point of talking about we being deliberate and that political to support the creation of jobs. If the YEA can be empowered, they may be able to do a lot. And if the government is serious about youth entrepreneurship, we can leverage on NEIP. Up till now, NEIP is just a government vehicle. Their funding is nothing to talk about. You don't even know where their source of funding is coming. So how can the vehicle that is supposed to support young people who want to become entrepreneurs, they don't even have funding themselves? So ask yourself, what are we doing? We need to give them that status. We need to support the agencies to do the work. So I don't always have a problem with this technocrat. But I have a point with the central government and what we do with our national budget. So the three things I mentioned and which I stand by, and Akwesi said he's a friend, is important. The skill set of the youth. It is not your fault as YE not to get the right skill set because they are not giving that skills from the universities. So this is where Akwesi and his team needs to understand that they have to push for this. Second, the central government have to be very, very deliberate about youth entrepreneurship. We've been pushing for the Ghana Startup Bill. One of the reasons why the Startup Bill is important is that it's going to set incentives for young people to start business. Ask yourself, how interested is central government in this? Every other African country is adopting it because they know what it can do. Others have implemented it and benefit their economy. Are we doing the same thing? These are the things we should be looking out for. And then finally, whether we like it or not, you cannot push the young people to become entrepreneurs like the finance minister said some time ago without the necessary, without the funding, without the capacity, and without the access to market. Then we are just saying that, hey, come and collect 5,000 Ghana cedi from NEIP, from GEA, and go and spend it. Because these things are supposed to be connected, and we have to be deliberate about it. Okay. So yes, that is my point, yeah.
We need to go. Any final words from you, Akwesi?
Hello?
Yes, any final words, marching orders, if I may put it that way?
Yes, one point I wanted to make finally is that we may agree with the statistics, but being at the Youth Employment Agency for over 5 years now, there is one thing I have realized, that there may be jobs in the system, but there are people who are not willing, unemployed though, but are not willing to take those jobs up. I can talk about the insurance sector, the number of jobs that we have provided in the insurance sector. We'll call on the young people to reduce their expectations and take up the jobs which we are able to give.
Okay, let's see how that works out. Sheriff, thank you. And thank you, Akwesi, for joining us all.
Right.
Of course, let's see how that will pan out in the next few days. But you're watching The Pulse here on the JoyNews channel. When we get back, we'll talk about the minority in Parliament. They are already kick-started some processes to launch a full-scale probe into the report issued by Professor Frimpong Boateng. We'll look at that when we get back. Please stay. And you're welcome back. The Global Union of Ghanaian Scholars is urging the government of Ghana to draw up a reintegration policy that will allow student evacuees from Sudan to be reintegrated into the various public universities across the country. Joining us now is president of the group, Lord Mark Mensah, who was an integral member of that coordinated committee that secured the successful evacuation of Ghanaian students from Sudan to Ethiopia ahead of government's evacuation plan yesterday. Thanks for your time here on The Pulse. And we just heard from some of the students express their frustration about how close they were, some of them, to finishing their academic activities in Sudan. Unfortunately for them, there's no way going back because of the situation. You say that we need a policy. How do we go about that?
I think, by the way, thank you very much for having us on the program. And we, first of all, want to thank your listeners and also Joy FM for covering this. I do not want us to claim honors for bringing our students back home safely. The government has played a major role, and we have to acknowledge that. And other stakeholders have also played a major, including yourself, Joy FM. So back to your question. We thank God that the students and the scholars are safely back home, which is what we were working hard for. Now, you agree with me that Ghanaians have started studying abroad long ago, but unfortunately we have no policy. And this is not going to be the last time we will have to evacuate Ghanaians and reintegrate them back into the system back home. So there has to be a system now in place to draw a policy, within the country and incorporate the Ghanaian students and scholars in the diaspora as part of that. We're not only talking about evacuating them, but integrating them also back home to continue their studies. These are young people, most of them are very young and have a whole future ahead of them, and we need them. We need to encourage them, we need to nurture them, we need to groom them, we need to educate them so that they'll become useful to the country. So I'm urging the Ghanaian government and Ministry of Education and other stakeholders to invite. Let's all come to the table and let's have a policy, not only to evacuate Ghanaians from the diaspora back home safely, but after they've gone back home, integrating them so that they can continue with their education and development. Plus, the welfare and well-being situations, which we are always neglecting. It is very, very important. People go through a lot of and then we just leave them. They go back home and struggle again to survive. So
and when we run a similar process for the returnees from Ukraine, there was still a challenge with the reintegration policy. Some of them, medical students, were unable to make it to the medical school based on a number of restrictions. And of course, the medical school has its own unique challenges there as to admitting foreign students. So that's going to be a problem for these students returning from Sudan as well.
Yes. So the policy, this is what we are talking about. For instance, when our students, medical students, returned home from Ukraine, there were issues of the Ukrainian education not, fit for the Ghanaian standard, which is strange. What's strange to me, because, for instance, even with Sudan now, we have a lot of Sudanese doctors, graduates that UK employed here. UK allowed them to come here and practice, right? So if anybody is studying in any of these countries and they go back and we kind of, label them as substandard in terms of education and the training they receive, then we ourselves have to look at our curricula and then reintegrate it. It's a global village we are in now. So how do we incorporate the international curriculum to suit Ghana? Because when they finish from Ghana, the doctors and nurses from Ghana are being employed in the UK and other places, which means they accept our education in Ghana and the training that we give to our people. Yes, the same way. How about those who are trained outside? Why do we then degrade them or downgrade their level of, education and say they are not fit for the Ghanaian system? It's just a matter of us coming together and look at it and have a policy, structure our curriculum to fit or incorporate the international curricula so that when people or students come back home, they will be able to integrate. It wasn't only about from Ukraine. It started with coronavirus, right? So the lockdown means that people from China and our students all over the world returned home. Even Sudan, the students returned home and they were left on their own. So we need to do something about it. The government has to, come to the table now. Let's organize and have a policy and a system nurture and integrate our students and scholars when they return back home.
Okay, but the immediate focus, the immediate focus now is the 74 plus students coming back into the country. How do we deal with a unique situation, knowing that they're coming from Sudan, no traces of their academic records owing to the war taking place there? I was interacting with some of the families and students myself yesterday, and the indication is that some of them were waiting on their institutions to get the certification. They can't get that now. So what's going to be the evidence, the proof that indeed you're in school, you are, say, for instance, the medical school, a reason for which you should be reintegrated?
I think we have a very good example. We started with Ukraine, those from Ukraine. So how did we go about it? They sat for exams, and the exams, the medical, school or medical board in Ghana, rated the students based on your performance. So students returning we can still go through. This is the policy we're talking about. So we should have a uniform policy and system in place. So you don't have to prove that indeed you were studying and you're good enough or you are this level of the academic. If they have to write exams, let's agree on that so that every student in the diaspora know that in case they want to return back home or anything happened, they are returning back home. This is the process. So we already have Ukrainian experience or Ghanaians returning from Ukraine as an example. So let's follow the same thing. How did we do with that work? Let's examine the process. Did the process help our students? How are they doing now that they have some into the system and going through the Ghanaian medical school process system? How are they doing?
Right.
Are they doing okay? If it's okay, then that is the system to adopt. Then we can agree on that and say from now on this is what we're going to do.
Okay.
If it's not working, we see how we can restructure it and then make it work for all of us.
Well, we're wrapping up, but surprising to note that in spite of the efforts by the government of Ghana to bring back home the students, one has declined that offer. What does it tell you about what's going on?
Well, it wasn't only in Sudan. It was also in Ukraine and other places, a lot of, even in Ukraine, in the case of Ukraine, some parents were telling their children or their wards not to return. All right, so we have some of them still lingering and, roaming in Europe, not to return. It tells you that there is a situation, we have a serious issue back home that students don't want to return. Again, we cannot just generalize the system or the situation. It could be that this particular student or students have issues back home, or they have nobody back home to go to, they have nothing to return to, and they feel like they will be there, and whatever happens, hopefully they will survive it. So it's hopelessness. I see it as hopelessness. You speak to some of them, my brother. Some of our students and scholars are really struggling and suffering in the diaspora. Here you are with no parents, no friend, no family, and yet in a war situation, you still don't want to return to home. Then it means there's a problem back home. That is why this particular student do not want to return. I am yet to speak to him directly, and once I get to know his point of view and understand his point of view, see how we can support him, because it's sad. It's sad. These are our future leaders. These are talented youths, and we need them to help us build our nation tomorrow.
Yeah, but I can imagine if you're coming back home to meet a group of 1.7 million persons who don't have jobs, that's going to be a tough one coming back home. But thank you, Lord Mark Mensah, of course, and we must congratulate your team as well for the great work you're doing supporting the evacuation process. Okay. And we are indeed your election headquarters. We're looking up to that internal contest of the National Democratic Congress. And today we're talking about the flag bearer hopeful, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, who says his reason for contesting the upcoming primaries is to make all Ghanaians prosperous, since he actually has what it takes to win the 2024 general elections. The former finance minister will on May 13 face stiff competition from frontrunner John Dramani Mahama and Kojo Bonsu. Joseph Akabley of our political desk now reports.
I will ask them to help me fix the economy. Right now, the biggest challenge we are facing is the economy. We are all hungry. We are hungry as people. There are tears in the eyes of Ghanaians everywhere. They should help me wipe the tears from the eyes of Ghanaians, soothe the pain in the hearts of Ghanaians. That requires a leader with the courage to change things, to change the status quo. That is what I will do.
The state of Ghana's economy remains a major concern to the man touted for his economic prowess. He comes into the race with a vast experience as a former governor of the Bank of Ghana and a former finance minister. He believes he can turn around the economy.
Every Ghanaian, no matter the birth of his or her circumstances, should have equal opportunity in our system to achieve whatever he or she wants to achieve. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. That dream will bring about prosperity and happiness. That dream will make all of us become very patriotic. That dream will make us be loyal to Ghana, our motherland, not to any political party or to any individual. Because we're not loyal to our nation, because we're not very patriotic enough.
But this won't come easy. He'll have to first win the May 13 primaries. He'll face off with former President John Dramani Mahama in Kojo Bonsu. The Economist Intelligence Unit in its April 2023 country report on Ghana noted that the NDC can revitalize its prospect of electoral victory with a new candidate such as Dr. Kwabena Dufour. The former finance minister believes he stands a better chance.
I'll ask my colleagues to help me do that. No one person solves a problem. And no one person is big enough to do anything. That's why in the Bible, the Creator himself, when he was creating a man, said, let us create what? Let us. In the Bible, the Lord never said, I. No, he said, let us. He could have made man himself, but he said, let us create a man in our own image. What does it mean? I want the NDC people to join me. We should all move forward, fix the economy, work together for the prosperity of this nation.
He has so far introduced the Ahoto project geared at making resources available to the party at the grassroots level. In a store of various parts of the country, he assures delegates he has more for them.
We will make sure that the party structures will be strengthened, that the workers in our offices will be well remunerated. Because, we said, I see it to regional offices, regions, the constituency of the city building, because MP before will be baby, you need to be arranged. And so, apart from bigger than the group, we have to strengthen our party, make sure that at every constituency we have our own offices.
Only time will tell if Dr. Kwabena Dufour will be able to win the May 13 primaries.
And stay with your election headquarters as we bring you that, of course, 360 coverage of the internal primaries of the NDC come May 13. You need to be with us here on the JoyNews channel. Now, the minority in Parliament say they have already kickstart processes to launch a full-scale probe into Professor Frimpong Boateng's Galamsey report. The report names top government officials and New Patriotic Party functionaries and accused them of complicity in illegal mining. Speaking to journalists in Parliament, Minority Leader Dr. Kezela Tuforsten says as soon as Parliament resumes from recess, the processes will unravel the probe to begin.
Many have raised questions over the clear links between illegal mining activities in the country and this international gold smuggling syndicate, in what looks like an organized crime. Indeed, clearly, the variations between reported volumes of gold that leaves the shores of Ghana lately and what is declared by our authorities lends credence to this fear. This House has been urged by the vast majority of our citizens to institute a bipartisan probe into this serious matter. We, on the side of this House, the NDC minority, support this call and shall take steps accordingly to activate processes for an independent probe into this matter in due course. So we urge you that in the coming days, don't be surprised to hear the NDC minority starting a process to constitute an independent probe into the Frimpong Boateng's report and that of the Al Jazeera investigative journalism piece that was aired on the issue of gold smuggling and that of Galamsey.
From the minority leader, who says it appears that they want to disregard for Ghana's mining laws and the destruction of the environment has the full blessing of the state and the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo.
One issue that dominated public discussion and got many of our citizens worried about is our environment and the collective survival as people, centered around the leaked report on the state of illegal mining in Ghana today. The said report, which was authored by the former Minister of Environment and the chairman of the defunct Interministerial Committee Against Illegal Mining, upon the request of the Chief of Staff to the President, reveals sordid details about the government fight against the illegal mining menace over the years. The ongoing indiscriminate and unbridled destruction of our forest reserves, natural reserves, rivers, and other water bodies in search of gold and other minerals has never been lost on some of us. Despite the acclaimed war against illegal mining activities in this country, this House has approved millions of Ghana cedis of taxpayers' money for the so-called president's fight against illegal mining. However, what came as a shock to many, and as confirmed in the report, the Frimpong Boateng's report, is the overwhelming evidence which shows the extent of official complicity in the canker. Indeed, this report has confirmed that the state itself gave its blessing to the wanton destruction of our environment and forest reserves. Unfortunately, the report indicts many in government and provides both material and collaborative evidence that this House cannot ignore. This damning verdict comes on the heels of similar recent investigation by international news agency, the Al Jazeera, into the activities of an illicit gold smuggling syndicate operation in Ghana, with alleged close associate to the President of the Republic of Ghana and other government officials.
And now, road users and traders at the construction area of the Obejebin-Lamte interchange have expressed frustration over the stalled project. The two-tier interchange, which started in October 2019, was designed to ease traffic congestion in the capital. Although the first phase of the project has been completed, the second phase has stalled due to the ongoing debt restructuring program. Commuters and traders who use the facility are pleading with government to speedily address their concerns. JoyNews' Papa Kwesi Shandoff paid a visit to the stalled construction and comes through with this report.
This happens to be the site for the Obejebin-Lamte interchange, a road project
which according to the government is supposed to address significantly the traffic congestion here in the capital. But unfortunately, the project currently has stalled. The contractor on site is no longer working. Of course, he says that he does not have the needed funds, and that has stalled the project. But the stalling of the project has now consequently resulted in a lot of inconveniences for road users and some traders alike. We are here to explore the extent of inconvenience and to gauge the challenges that the situation currently is posing here in the heart of the city. When the news team first arrived at the site of the stalled project, they were greeted with a cloud of dust. An inconvenience road users along the stretch say has been their experience since work at the site came to a halt. But the persistent dust and dirt is not the only hurdle faced by road users. According to some aggrieved traders along the stretch, the situation is also having a negative effect on their businesses, aside their health concerns.
We all are witnesses to the dust that we are really inhaling. So we are really appealing to the government to be able to speed up with the construction, because at the end of the day, although it's going to facilitate the transportation much better, we are also going through hell because our businesses are not flourishing as they used to be. Customers are not coming in at the end of the day because of the road, and at times the traffic too is too much. So they are not coming in, they will divert to other direction and they wouldn't come in.
My main problem concerning this construction is the dust, because almost every day you will not see the amount of dust you carry from here to home unless you are bathing. So the dust is too much, and not that always that the water that I used to water the road used to come. So my main problem is the dust. For the construction, we already know that they say that there's no money in the country, so they've quit the work that they are doing, and even the workers have all moved. But to be honest, the dust is too much.
The situation is really affecting us. Our health is presently at risk. Occasionally, the dust is sprinkled with water, but this is not enough to dilute the threat the situation poses to us. We need the authorities to address this issue immediately. That's all I can say.
Some motorists who spoke to the news team could also not hide their frustrations. The impact of the stalled project is not only affecting traders and commuters. Drivers have also been inconvenienced. Now, Kofi, you've been plying this particular stretch for a very long time. What has been your experience given the stalled project?
When the traffic is inside, our fuel and this thing, you can take the person, you have charged him already, you cannot add anything again, you'll be in the traffic a while before. So it's affecting us.
Oh, I can't hear by any hands and shoot to a my brewer hapa would dump and promo hosi. And shoot to a bread any was a secret. And shoot to a quanning to me, cry this a fan graphic road before. And my brewer hapa for that.
A worker at a firm near the site who spoke on condition anonymity further lamented how the situation affects business, especially during the rains. Speaking off camera, he bemoaned the decline in patronage due to the inability of customers to drive to the showroom due to the blockages caused by the stalled project. Like many affected persons, he also wants government to speedily intervene in the situation. According to the contractor on site, the stall in the project is a consequence of a lack of funding, and he says that until he's able to come by some resources, he would not be able to proceed with the construction. For JoyNews, my name is Pakwesi Shandoff.
We take you up north because shea nut cultivation serves as the main source of livelihood for many rural women in northern Ghana, but poor weather conditions are said to be affecting fruiting of the shea trees. There's more in this edition of Climate Focus.
For 7 years, Nafisa Wahab and Nuria Zubaida worked in Ghana's capital city, Accra, as head porters carrying luggage to fend for themselves. But they returned home when they realized that the capital city is not a suitable venue to survive as young women.
I was carrying luggage to make some income, then used the small income generated to buy things and returned home. I was doing kayaking in Accra. Prior to that, that, I was hand-picking shea nuts. It was not fruiting anymore, so I had to leave for Accra.
Both in their mid-20s, they now live in their hometown called Sumpini and Kojope in the Savannah region, where everyone relied on shea fruits for survival. Like Nafisa and Nuria, almost everyone in the villages harvested ripe fruits for sale to earn an income. It is how they have sustained their children's education and maintained their families.
I was collecting the shea nuts and making some money. When shea nuts were in abundance, we could pick them for 1 week and process them to make 1,000 Ghana cedis or 600 Ghana cedis, which you can use for your daily needs. It's no longer there, which is why we are doing kayaye.
They are just two of hundreds of young women who migrate to the cities every year, hoping to make a better living. Before being processed, every share in the world passes through the hands of 60 million rural women farmers whose lives, as well as that of their family and communities, depend on shea trees. For women in northern Ghana who hand-produce shea butter in their homes, it is a source of food, medication, cosmetics for skin and hair. But the women do not know why the trees are not bearing much fruits anymore.
The shea tree no longer bears fruit as it once did. This forces us to concentrate on charcoal production. When the shea fruited well, it provided us with financial relief.
As you can see, the tree bears no fruit. Yes, people live for greener pastures in Accra and Kumasi. Those who farm usually go there to work for capital before returning to farm. Women also go there to make money and then return to feed themselves because the majority of them engage in seasonal charcoal burning.
Because of business, and
that's all we have for you here on the Pulse. I am Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com. Stories there for you to catch up on. We'll see you again next time, but next is Let's Talk Showbiz. Please enjoy.